Okay, you ready?
Before we get started,
Okay.
let's ground ourselves. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Okay. And would you be so kind as to lead us in a prayer? I'm just kidding.
A body prayer.
A body prayer.
Yeah, let's ground.
Yes.
Okay, let's do it. All right, so if you're at home, you can just find a comfortable place to just sit. You can sit cross-legged or on the floor or on a chair or couch. Just get comfy. And just take a moment to drop your shoulders down away from your ears. Take a moment to just feel the rise and the fall of your breath. Softening your jaw, relaxing the space in between your eyebrows, and just kind of tuning your attention down into your pelvis, your hips, allowing that area to relax, maybe soften or just widen into the earth. Feeling your tailbone just kind of pull down like there's a tail attached to it, almost vacuuming you into the center of the earth, the belly of the earth, the heartbeat of the earth. And we'll just take a few big deep breaths together. So maybe you find you want to exhale all your air out of your body, just emptying out. Taking a big deep breath in through your nose. And exhaling out through your mouth. Doing that again, taking a big, wide, expansive breath in. And exhaling out. And one more, breathe in fresh air, fresh life. And exhaling out with a sigh. Beautiful. And keeping your eyes closed and seeing if you can almost soften into the back half of your body. Softening into the back part of your heart. Maybe even sending breath there in the back half of your heart. And noticing that when you relax into the back half of your body, maybe you even just slightly lean back without even really realizing it. And you can slowly maybe place your hands on your thighs or do just a little bit of a gentle stretch, just kind of coming back and opening up your eyes. Welcome back.
That was wonderful. Yes. Do we need to do that before every episode?
That would be wonderful.
It would be.
That would be fantastic. Can you come here before we record every time?
Week.
Why don't I just record a little 5 minutes for you guys, and you can just play my voice.
We could just replay this part every single time.
Yeah. I could go to sleep to your voice.
Okay, let's get started.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode.
See you on the other side. So excited today. We have Lindsey with us. Leah and I tokened the name Lindsey Love, even though that's not your last name. We call you Lindsey Love because we feel like you just embody love.
We also really thought that was your last name. We did. I don't know why we thought that, but it fits.
But you should change your last name because it is kind of iconic.
I love it. Actually, after you guys said that, I'm like, I think I want to change my last name to Love. So it's in the works. It's in the process, but
it works so well.
I love that so much.
Yes.
Okay, so Lindsey, you have been our Pilates instructor, which we love you for that. You took us out of our comfort zone and taught us a lot. You're not just a regular fitness instructor. You're so much more than that. You are a sound bath healer, and you are a trauma-informed embodiment coach. Mm-hmm. And you are soon to be, I don't know what you call it.
Breathworker?
Facilitator? Breathwork facilitator, healer, what have you, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I also want to say we've talked about her several times in previous episodes, And if you are familiar with the episodes where we make fun of my dancing, it is with Lindsey's embodiment groups.
Yes.
She wouldn't make fun of my dancing though.
The other thing I want to say
Beautiful. We get down.
is we have talked about you a lot, but it's like there's a story there, but we're not going to ask because we want to have her on and like have an authentic reaction at that moment or in this moment. But we're very curious about you, and it's in a very like good. We just love you and we want to know your story.
I feel that. And thank you so much for having me on. And it's an honor. And I'm really happy to be here. So thank you.
Okay, so let's get started. Well, I guess my first question is just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So, where I would really like to start is just kind of how I came back home to my body. And so I have been a mover for most of my life. You know, I was trained in dance on and off throughout my life. I've been a competitive gymnast, competitive cheerleader, soccer player, ballroom dancer, what have you. I've most likely have dabbled in it. And even though I have been able to do all of the movements correctly, do all of the technique, I wasn't actually connected to my body. And even if you were to ask me years ago, how are you feeling? What are you feeling right now? I couldn't even name the feeling of what I was feeling, couldn't even express because I just was not even connected to my emotional body. Right? And so I had felt that way for most of my life, not really knowing why and curious about it. But it wasn't until I started my embodiment certification and when we were going through the pandemic and lockdown that I had an experience of returning and coming back home to my body. I had been disassociated from my body for pretty much my entire life, not knowing. And I had this experience. And so I've been teaching Pilates. I've been in this world for, going on 12 years now of teaching, practicing. So I've been in the movement world, coaching, guiding people's bodies. And there was always kind of this burning desire, especially a year before the pandemic hit, where I was really wanting to be serving women on a deeper level of healing, just because at that point in my life, I had gone through my divorce and I had started the healing journey and kind of asking the questions of like, okay, why do I keep choosing the same type of men that I keep choosing? Why do I keep repeating these patterns? And really just taking more of a deeper dive in to therapy and slowly edging into different modalities, healing, holistic modalities of softly just kind of slowly coming back home and healing myself. And so a year before the pandemic hit, I was having this burning desire of wanting to help women. And I knew that it was going to be in the form of dance somehow. And I knew that I wanted it to be like just a fun way to heal together with depth, but also just like a kick-ass, like fun time where we'd also get like a great workout. And I was like, I want both. Like, why can't we do both? And so I kind of started searching a little bit and I didn't really find anything. And my spiritual mentor at the time had gone out to a retreat and he came back and he returned and he goes, Lindsey, I think I found what you were looking for. He's like, all of these women in this retreat were raving about this experience called Embody. And he's like, I think you should check it out. Just look up the person, see if it's a fit for you. And so I went to Nadia Moonla, who's my embodiment coach and who I got my certification through. I went to her website and I was just like, this is what I want to be doing. Like, I want to be coaching and helping women in embodiment, somatics, and healing nervous system regulation. And just, I didn't even know what I was stepping into. I just knew I wanted to do it. And so I got on board. I was like, okay, I'm going to do coaching with her and the embodiment certification. And this was way before we even knew the pandemic was going to hit. And so I'm in the embodiment coaching with her and the pandemic hits and we're in lockdown. And so it was the perfect actually timing to be tending to my nervous system while we're in the middle of or beginning of a pandemic while we are scared. And thank God, I just was blessed to be able that I had my body. It's like my body already knew to sign up for something, to be taking care of myself in that moment, in that time.
Chills.
Yeah. And so, we're out of work. The world has been turned upside down and we're in lockdown. I'm not working for about 3 months. And in that 3 months, I was in my embodiment training or certification. I was doing Pilates almost every single day. I had a reformer in my home. I was going out into nature multiple times throughout the day, just laying in the earth and taking multiple walks just to not really be thinking about all the things that were going down and just to get that peace of mind and peace in my body. And then I was doing breath work for the first time multiple times throughout the week. And I just started having these experiences of, one, making contact with my inner little girl for the first time. And that, she was really sad. I didn't know why she was sad, but I just was learning the embodiment tools to be with her, to self-mother and just let her be. I was learning about my inner critic. I was learning about my shadow. And then I was having these crazy breathwork experiences where it was almost trippy. I experienced my ancestors for the first time. I had met them. I was feeling physical sensations in my body, of my body shaking and wanting to release something and get it out, specifically in my low back, which is all inner child and, just safety.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
Yeah. It would literally vibrate and shake like it wanted to get out. I felt my soul's voice return back into me. And, these are all experiences that are hard to really make sense to others unless you've been through it. But when it's happening in your body and you're having these physical sensations and you're seeing these things that it just, what's happening and it just makes sense, right? And so I was really having this spiritual awakening and, not that wasn't a hard time. That was a hard time for many people. So I don't want to downplay that. It was, but for me, it was a sacred pause. And so there was a moment where I was just doing all the things. I was really taking care of myself. I got on a circadian rhythm. I was very legit in just making sure I went to bed at 10, up at 7, bed to 10, up at 7. My cycle aligned with the moon, the full moon, for 3 months in a row for the first time. And so it was just, things were just flowing, right? And I was just choosing these modalities that were just making sense to me at the time. I was activating my nervous system with breath work. I was calming my nervous system with embodiment. And it was just this beautiful dance back and forth for me, to where I had a moment where I was standing in between my kitchen and my front room. And it was during the day. It was, in that time of lockdown. And I just had this moment where I felt I came back into my body and I was brought down into my knees. And I just heard my body say, welcome home, Lindsey, welcome home. And I just, fell to my knees, and I was just so thankful I had returned back in, not knowing that I had been disassociated for most of my life.
Oh,
Wow.
my God. Can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah.
So we were talking about trauma responses earlier, and it's come up in a conversation recently with another friend. Were you freeze? Is your trauma response to freeze?
It depends on the situation, but typically, yeah, it's first to freeze.
I didn't realize it was connected with it's basically disassociating, removing yourself from the situation.
Yeah. I didn't
realize.
I think that's typically my first one, but I've had both.
Okay.
Where it also I've had fight, and then I've also had just numbing out. So, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's backtrack. Because how did you get to this point where you were okay, something's got to give. I got to do something different. Because whatever I'm doing right now, it's not working for me.
Yeah, I think that, it all goes back to childhood.
Right.
And so,
Yeah, it always does.
Right. And so, growing up for me, I grew up in a small town in Hartville, Ohio, and it was a Mennonite town, just a very wholesome place to grow up. I call it my shire. Whenever we've gone back, I'm just like, oh, don't be touched by the outside world. Mennonite town, my family's not Mennonite, but our neighbors were. And so it was normal to see horse and buggy like drive by and, go to the annual pig roast where we all bring potluck and, pigs
so
are being
wholesome.
roasted and, we're eating, fresh ice cream and drinking fresh cow's milk and, just a very wholesome place to grow up. Right. But in my home, I grew up in an alcoholic home. My father is a high functioning alcoholic, and my mom had her own stuff too. She was sold for $3,000 when she was a baby. It was between an Irish family and an Italian family, and she was sold to the Irish family up in Cleveland, Ohio. So she's got her own stuff too, right? And so, and I'm at a place in my life where I can say, like, okay, they did the best that they could with how they grew up and what they were given. Definitely had my physical needs met. But as far as just like emotionally, there's definitely that. And I was the child that I filtered my family's emotions through my body to make sure like everybody else was safe and okay. Right.
Now, you said something before we started recording, and we were talking about being the black sheep of the family.
Oh, yeah.
And Leah said, "Are you the black sheep?" And you said, "No, I'm the white one." What does that mean?
Yeah, I
To
think,
you.
yeah, for me, like, black sheep, white sheep, all different, like, it's great, it's beautiful because it's other than, but for me, black sheep has, I guess, maybe more of this like negative outcast connotation of black. And when I see white as the healer of the family. I see white as the leader of the family, the one who's asking the questions, the one who's wanting to not necessarily heal the family, but heal the patterns, heal the generational cycles, and heal that lineage and going forward for our families, for our community.
I love that.
For our friends, for, the world.
The cycle breakers.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I saw something that said rainbow sheep, and I was like, I love that. I am a rainbow sheep. I am not a black one anymore.
Absolutely.
So
It's whatever you want.
yeah, whatever you want it to be. Like, just know that like you are unique, and you're the cycle breaker
Yeah. Yeah.
for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. So you also said earlier about how when you started on your healing journey, you realized that you had certain patterns with men, which I very much so. I had the alcoholic father and emotionally neglectful mother. So like I gravitated towards certain relationships where I wanted to change that person. And it was almost like if the less attention they gave me or the worse that they treated me, the more comfort I felt. And the more I gravitated towards that kind of a man, not even realizing that it was like trauma bonding.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I again, it stems back to childhood, why
Sure.
I chose the men that I had chosen unbeknownst. I was sexually abused when I was a 5-year-old little girl, and it was an adult. And again, I didn't know this until I started my healing journey, and I came back home to my body, and our bodies hold our stories, our fascia, our muscles, our tissues, our organs. They hold it. And so when I started unpacking and unraveling and healing and coming back home, that's when the memory came back that this had happened. And been doing EMDR therapy with it, and that's been a huge catalyst, a huge help in my healing journey with triggers. And so around that event, but anyways, yeah, so going back to that, that's why I got into kind of the more emotional, mental abusive relationships with those men that I had chosen, and ended up getting married to a man here in Louisville. And yeah, I'm losing my train of thought for a second. Yeah. And so got into another like emotionally, mentally abusive relationship. And it didn't come out until we did get married, and, you know, he had me, and then just kind of everything kind of came to the surface, and we had moved away from Louisville, and I was separated from, you know, my family and friends living down in Florida. And so I went through that whole process, and that was probably another pivotal point in my life when I decided to leave. It took me about 4 times to leave this person. I think the average woman leaving an abusive relationship, it's like 7 or 8 times.
Yeah, 7.
And so I eventually got out, and that was just a whole process. It's so hard to leave sometimes when you are in a place where you do not know anybody and you're alone. And although I had the support of my family, and they did want me to leave him, because it had taken me so many times, this time when I actually really decided to leave, I was alone. And I had signed up to go into shelters to make sure I had a place to stay. And so I like had to time it correctly so that I could pack up all my things and just, you know, try to leave when he wasn't there, and just, you know, all of that. It's hard leaving a situation. And so I did. I ended up leaving. And in that period when I had left and I was, you know, figuring out where I was going to land next, I got into therapy. And this was before all of, you know, the other holistic healing modalities I had started. I was doing cognitive therapy, and there were 2 things that my therapist said. And one of them, he said, Lindsey, if you are going to heal your body, because you have PTSD, he's like, we are going to have to get your body under control. We're going to have to get you to sleep. We're going to have to get you regulated, or else we're not going to be able to start the healing process. And I was like, that was the first time I had ever heard a cognitive therapist say, we have to get your body under control. We got to get you to sleep. And so, you know, I was taking like melatonin and valerian root at the time, and it worked for a good 6 months. It helped me to at least like sleep a bit during that time. And the second thing he said, Lindsey, this, your, you know, husband, your ex-husband, this cycle that you're in is not about you. This is whatever has happened to him in his childhood. And so the cycle or the fighting or the abuse starts. And then there's the love bombing, or, you know, the I'm sorry, I love you, I'm going to do this, and the sweet, and like, you know, everything's okay for a little bit, for a period of time. And then it just starts all back over again. And it's just a vicious kind of cycle. And so when he said that, I was like, okay, this isn't going to change. He isn't going to change unless he's doing the work. And, you know, he didn't want to do the work. So, you know, that's what led me to, you know, be in the situation that I was.
Did it also kind of, hearing that, was that a little bit freeing? Like knowing that like you could be released from that, like, oh my God, it's not me.
Yeah, I've done all I can. He's
Absolutely.
not pulling.
He's going to do this to me, to whoever, to that person, until he makes a decision to
Yeah, absolutely.
change.
Yeah, 100%.
So that had to feel nice to hear.
Yeah. And then that marriage really taught me over and over again the lesson of choosing myself, because I was so used to giving my power away and because my power was taken from me when I was a 5-year-old little girl. And so I was used to giving my power away to others, looking to others for advice, wisdom that they knew better than I knew myself, because I wasn't even connected to my body.
Did you feel like you were, though, when he said, like, you're not connected to your body? Were you like, what are you talking about? Like, I move, I do this, I dance, I know my body very well, I can control it very well.
Yeah, I don't know if I thought about it at that time.
Okay.
But I think with like, I knew I was connected to my body on a physical level, and that I
Okay.
loved my body physically, like how it looked, but I didn't trust my internal body. I didn't, because of all of the things that I had struggled with, which makes me want to go back to South Africa and kind of explain that story a little bit.
Yeah.
So At 19 years of age, I decided to go out to South Africa and volunteer at an orphanage. It was in between college years, and I was like feeling lost. I'm like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I just want to go out, take a break, and go to this orphanage. So I raised money. My church supported me at the time, and I went out to this organization called God's Golden Acre. And anybody could come and love on these kids. Didn't matter what you believed, what religion you were. And I'm like, yeah, let's do this. Like, I'm all about it. And so I lived there for 9 months, and I was at this orphanage, and we had about anywhere between like 80, 83, 90 kids. It would fluctuate because some were there because their parents had died from AIDS. Some were there, through foster care. And so they were just staying with us for a little while. And then we also, one of our biggest supporters was Oprah. And so we'd get Oprah's kids on the weekends sometimes. So it just was always fluctuating. And when I was there, I started to experience a lot of health problems. I was having anxiety like I had never had in my life. Being at 19 years of age, that was the first time I ever experienced anxiety. And then, obviously I was experiencing culture shock there, so it was situational. I was experiencing a lot of abdominal pain that I didn't know where it was coming from, especially after I ate. And then I had a pretty traumatic experience while I was living there. So there was a week where we were taking the teenage kids into the city of Durban. I lived on the east coast of the country. It's a beautiful country, by the way. Have you guys?
No.
Okay. It's gorgeous. It's like a little mini USA because they have everything, the beaches and the mountains and the forest and the desert. They have like it all in one country. It's beautiful.
Love that.
And so anyway, there was a week where we were taking the teenage kids into the city of Durban to learn a dance for Youth Day. And me and another volunteer at the time, Matthias from Germany, him and I were chaperoning the kids. And so we had a driver. He would drop us off and we'd chaperone the kids to make sure they were safe. And throughout that week, Matthias and I would take a walk down this alleyway to this small grocery store to get Coca-Cola Classic and get some chocolate or whatever. And every time we'd walk down that alleyway, we would see this same security guard standing out one of the buildings, and we'd wave and say hi to him. And we saw him a couple or a few times during that week. Well, there was one day Matthias couldn't go, and so I was chaperoning alone by myself. And so I decided to take that same walk. And, they say when you go to other countries or you're doing, volunteer work, always travel in twos or travel in threes so that you're safe. Well, I just didn't think about it that day. I let my guard down and I had my purse. I had my camera with me. I definitely looked like a tourist and I was taking that same walk. And I'm walking down the alleyway and I see this man jump out of a tree with a machete in his hand. And he's screaming and yelling at me to stop, to not move and stay there. So I freeze in my tracks, and this other man between, on the alleyway or the sidewalk in between two buildings, he runs out and runs down and turns the corner, and the man with the machete is running after him. And so I just freeze. I don't know what just happened. I don't know what to do. I'm just standing there. The man with the machete comes back, and as he gets closer, I'm like, oh, this is the security guard that we had been seeing throughout the week. He gets closer and he says, ma'am, I was up in a mango tree cutting a mango down for lunch. And he goes, I saw this man who saw you. He picked up a brick and stood in between two walls and was getting ready to who knows what, beat me, kill me. I don't know, right? And he was getting ready for me. So literally this man was my fallen angel, and I call it my fallen angel story because
oh my God,
I don't know if I'd be here at this point.
I did not know where that story was going to go.
So, and there were, but my point is, like, when that happened, how I internalized that was I internalized it as that was my fault.
Oh, shit.
I looked like a tourist. It's my fault. I was very hard on myself, right? And so I internalized it like I shouldn't have looked the way I looked. I shouldn't have gone by myself. Like, I internalized it all, and I didn't tell anybody. And I didn't realize that that was a traumatic thing to happen to someone. And so I just remained silent with it. I didn't tell anybody, and I just kept going. I just played it off like it was another day. because of how I grew up in an alcoholic home and just not being connected to my body, not using my voice, not feeling like I had a voice, growing up, not feeling like I could express my needs or what have you. And so anyways, I internalized all of that. And when I got back to the States, I experienced a lot of like numbness, a lot of PTSD, not knowing what had happened to me, and still experiencing a lot of extreme anxiety. And when I got to the States, we found out that I had cysts on my ovaries and that they had ruptured while I was there. So I was just experiencing a lot in my 19-year-old sweet little body. And I'm just like, why is all of this happening? Like, why am I experiencing all of this? And so that's also really when more of my healing journey with my body started. So I started going to therapy for culture shock and just like everything that I was experiencing. I didn't know how to handle this anxiety, and she wanted me to get on Lexapro. And so I got on Lexapro. I tried that for quite a few months, and 6 months or so. And I'm like, this is just not for me. I felt foggy. I didn't feel like myself. I couldn't focus. I just really did not feel good on it. And so I ended up getting off, and I started seeing a naturopathic doctor, and I started seeing a homeopathic nurse. And some of these homeopathic remedies were able to calm my heart rate down, slowly and gently calm my anxiety. And then once I met with this naturopathic doctor, we did all of the blood work, and we were to see like my cortisol levels were up, my adrenal glands were shot. And he's just like, we need to get your body back on board. My hormone levels were off. And so we did a complete reset detox of my body. And he had Metagenics was the company that we went through at that time to support my body with medical food, supplements, adrenal support, just all of the things so that I'd be replenishing and healing my body while I was going through this detox. And this detox was really only supposed to last about 4 months. And so it was, think like really clean eating, even cleaner than like the Whole30, right? So like no caffeine, no salt, no sugar, fresh vegetables, maybe like frozen would be fine. Organic chicken, just like everything organic, right? And so it was the best I ever felt in my life. And I went up to 6 weeks with it. It was just felt so good. And so that really was the beginning of like my healing journey with my body. And then the anxiety still stayed quite a bit.
How old were you then?
So I was probably maybe like then 20, 21 at that point then. And so sometimes when people when children have experienced trauma in their early life or a chaotic, dysfunctional home, when they leave the home, then they have to learn to function by themselves without that comfort zone. And so that can also create a lot of nervous system dysregulation within the body and anxiety, depression, what have you. And so I think there was a combination of things going on that was definitely, social. I wasn't connected to my body. I also had received a lot of vaccines all at once heading over there. And I'm not against or for vaccines. I needed them to support my body while I was going over there. But I think because I had received so many that it possibly also contributed to a lot of mercury in my brain with anxiety. And so I think it was a combination of things. But, I started to also unpack and unfold just the anxiety and really asking myself the question, like, why am I struggling with these things and my peers aren't struggling like I am? Like, why am I showing up in certain situations where I am shaking and I have so much anxiety in these social situations? Why is my body responding this way viscerally? Like, why? Like, I just kept asking, like, why? Like, I keep trying to return back to her. I keep trying to do the right thing, do the things. And, at that time, so I grew up in a pretty conservative Christian home. And I had people saying to me, in that community, well, are you praying enough? Or like, well, you're just not grateful enough. And I'm like, I am trying. I'm a good person. I am like trying to do all the things, but something is not clicking. Something is not responding. I know this woman who lives inside here is like wanting to it's just like I felt like I knew that there was this light. I knew that there was this person within me, but I didn't know how to access her. And I really didn't access her until I came home to my body, with embodiment, with somatics, with breathwork, with connecting into nature. And once that happened, then I was able to peel away the layers. I was able to heal. My psychic gifts were able to come online. My intuitive gifts were able to come online. And I was just able to finally access the woman that I knew that was in there.
I feel like so many of our parents that we grew up with, they have so much unhealed trauma. And so when you go to them and you're like, I'm struggling, I'm this, they have no tools in their toolbox. So they can't give you any tools, anything that's really substantial. And so it's like kids who grow up and have these traumatic childhoods, they become adults who are just trying to like navigate life, but don't know what the fuck they're doing. And we have to learn the hard way through experiences and trials and tribulations to just kind of figure it out.
Like no coping skills.
There's no coping skills. And so I always say this, it's such a disadvantage when you come from a home like that than from somebody who doesn't, because you don't know what to do and how to do it. You know that something's wrong and you know that, you don't feel right in your body, but it's like, just the learning process, just to feel closer to home, it's such a journey. It's wild.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so now I'm trying to think of where you were at.
Well, I want to know, somatics comes up a lot. We did interview Callie,
Yeah.
who is a somatic coach, I guess.
Yeah.
There's so many different types of somatic, what would you call it, healing or somatic practices. What to our listeners who have no idea what that word even means, like how could you explain what somatics and embodiment mean in a very easy to understand way?
Yeah, so embodiment, just in its like simplest form, is just how you feel within your own skin, how you feel at home within your own body, and it's about awareness. And so being aware of the physical sensations, being aware of all of the senses, and just basically feeling at home within your skin. Somatics then is more about the physical, the pain or the physical sensations to the world relating around you. And so like if we use the word suffering, that's going to land in my body differently than it's going to land in someone else's body. Or the word sacrifice, that's going to land, that word is going to land differently in my body than it's going to land in someone else's body. And so in relationships, just with using words and communicating with one another, it lands completely differently because we've all have different stories. We all have different cultural upbringings. We all have different upbringings that we've had. And so that those words can mean something completely differently in how we feel it.
It's like when the old school therapy, I remember being a kid and like you see therapists and you think, oh, they show you pictures of blobs and ask you what you see. Like,
oh yeah,
I didn't know what therapy was. I didn't understand what that was, but it's like, you're going to see something different than someone who has experienced like something completely different than you.
Yeah.
So it's like that, like what you're feeling. If I say I'm just piecing together right now. Some people have no problem with the word surrender, but someone who has maybe had to surrender or didn't want to surrender is going to have a vitriol reaction to that word and be like, fuck no, I'm not surrendering.
Yeah. Or the word God.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
That's a very good point. I never really thought about it like that.
Yeah, because I think religion for me for a very long time was like a very, fuck that, no. And now I catch myself saying like things that sound religious.
Yeah.
But it means it's about probably something completely different right now.
Right.
Would you say in the state that you're in?
Yes. It has a different meaning to me now. Before it was such a triggering word because then the meaning that I had for the word was very different than the word I have now. So yeah, because I've like worked to heal that part of me.
Just like dancing.
I'm trying.
You know, you're doing so good.
I'm doing so good.
You are.
Yeah. No, I know it's a very hard thing for you. And you keep going through the discomfort and doing it anyways.
The part about coming into your body, and this is like something I would not have known what that even meant if you said that 3 or 4 years ago. I'd have been like, I'm in my body.
Yeah, I think some people
How
don't.
else am I supposed to be in my body? I'm in it. Like, what are you talking about? But we've often said a lot of times, like, whenever you are going through a depressive episode or something traumatic, like, you remove yourself from your body to survive. Like, it's like you're so disconnected from your body that I didn't know I was disconnected until I connected. That's when it was like, oh my God. I had no idea there was a disconnect at all.
Right.
Because you think you're like, well, I'm in my body. How would I not be connected to
It's
it?
like another portal or another opening. And something I want to say with like, being an embodiment facilitator and coach, it is not that I'm always yummy, yummy, yummy and always like embodied. I have to still like constantly practice of staying embodied.
Yeah.
Right. And like, it's a practice of making sure I go out maybe at the end of the day and I'm putting my feet in the earth, or like sitting here right now, I'm rubbing my legs, making sure I'm staying connected. I'm staying in my body. If those of you that can't see me, I'm like rubbing my thighs to make sure I'm like connected and still landing in. Right. And so
What would be some advice to somebody who doesn't know if they are in their body or not? Like they are so unaware and so not in this space. They don't know if they are or not.
that's a good question. I would say 2 simple places to just start is grounding. Going out and putting your feet in the earth, laying in the earth, that you'll receive so much from that. That is one simple place to start. And then just simply being aware of your breath. Your breath is everything. Your inhale is the masculine. Your exhale is the feminine.
Oh.
And so if you want to, if you focus, and I learned this from my embodiment coach, Nadia, if you take a breath in and you exhale out through your mouth and you keep going with that exhale until you find a little drop of pleasure in your body, that's slowly dropping in. That's slowly embodying. And then it's slowly finding the feminine, the flow of what unravels, what opens up in your body.
I love that.
Don't you do that like little breath work practice every morning?
Yeah. I do morning yoga flow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, you need to drop into some feminine. I mean, you don't need to do anything. We were talking about that earlier. Like
I'm working on it, Leah.
I know. I love it. But like, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense why like you like to do that in the mornings. It's probably very healing for you.
And like the breath work and the journaling and like it's I grew up in a very similar household as you. My dad was an alcoholic, but he was also abusive. And then I had a sibling who was abusive. So I always felt, and I didn't know this at the time because you don't know what you don't know, but I was very much so like a fighter and like, it's you against the world. And, I had to be that to survive and feel safe. But, when I got out of that environment, I was talking to her, I have like a very masculine energy to me and sometimes struggle with women because of that. And it's been, my work has been like dropping in my body, becoming softer and more gentle and getting more into my feminine. That's been the hard thing, where hers is, she's completely opposite. So
Yeah.
Well, I feel your feminine. Like when you've come into Pilates and stuff and just like the love and the open heart that you have had. Like I see the masculine too. I feel that also. And I think it's, but I definitely, like I've felt and I see both. And I've definitely have felt your feminine and have been embraced by your feminine.
Okay, I really appreciate that because
Too,
I've
yeah.
really worked on that.
Yay.
Yay.
And it like one thing I do want to presence too is like it doesn't and gender doesn't matter, but like because we all have masculine and feminine,
Sure,
right? And
right.
so even if we gravitate towards more of the masculine, like that's okay. That's okay if that's our natural how we naturally express ourselves in this lifetime. That's fine. We're just learning to balance.
Yeah.
And that's why we do the embodiment work together, and like where I'm creating that space for us women to gather together to slow down, to be in a safe space where we can drop into our breath, drop into our bodies, feel what's actually going on inside and move it through our bodies, in the form of power, pleasure, and play through embody. And so, yeah.
So you started this, but I assume during this time you were in a tumultuous marriage. So how was that like being on a healing journey while also being with somebody who maybe wasn't willing to evolve or grow or look at their own trauma?
Right. Yeah. So at that time when I was with him, although I had done, the work of working on my anxiety and like self-help work and healing just like, my body with like detoxing and going to a naturopathic doctor, I hadn't started like the spiritual awakening or the deep dive. That didn't happen until once we got divorced and I was doing, different types of therapy and stuff. So being with him, and although always being a person who's wanted to continually grow, wanting to understand, wanting to know the truth, wanting to understand what's going on. And yes, him not really being that way or being that open. I think for me, when I was in that marriage, I was just kind of doing the next thing and doing what society wanted me to do next because we had been together for, however many years. And it was just like the next thing to do. And so I was in a space where life was constantly deciding for me and I wasn't deciding my own life. And so that marriage kept showing up in different situations where I had to continually choose myself. And that was the repeating kind of lesson for me now when I look back. And yeah, when I decided to leave, like I said, it took me about 4 times to actually like leave the marriage.
Was he scary when you would try to leave?
The 2 times that I had left, it was when we were dating. And so that wasn't really scary. And then the other 2 times, one was when he was working a night shift. So I was able to pack up all my things in the middle of the night and get out. Wow. And then the next time his family was around. So yeah, like I was able to do it when there were other people around and it just be done that way.
Good.
So
something you said earlier, I want to circle back to it because you were like, even though I do these things, like I still have to like practice these. And I think a lot of times people in the healing space, especially the healers who are like coaching and helping with these practices, are put on this like pedestal. Like, oh, they know their shit. Like, look how much work they've done. But it's like therapists sometimes need therapy. And medicine workers use the medicine. And embodiment coaches practice embodiment. Like, it is never like a done, like healed thing. Like, there is no, I'm healed because I did this. It's no, I'm healing and this is working for me. But I'm saying all of this because I'm also like, your healing journey started at 19. There have been many catalysts, but each one seems like it like chipped away layer by layer until you were ready for the next layer. Like what you were like, it's like one thing at a time, like one step at a time, one day at a time. Like you and I talk all the time how we used to do all of these things, but we weren't really healing. And I kind of want to take that back a little bit. We were.
Right.
In the way we knew how.
Right.
And then when we were ready, it went deeper.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that when we continue to choose courage and faith and step forward in faith, I think that the things that are supposed to find us, or like what we're supposed to find. And it's just this natural progression instead of like, oh, I got to strategize. And if I do this and do that, and like, no, it's like just, it's an unfolding and a natural progression. At least that's been my experience of just not giving up.
Yeah. And all three of us knew that things weren't right. We didn't necessarily have the right answer, but we were always searching on how to find peace.
It's what she said earlier.
What?
That's the warrior in you.
And you.
Yeah.
And you. And
Yeah.
you.
And you.
Yeah.
And you. And the listeners.
But it was like I didn't necessarily know what to do, but I knew I had to do something. So I was always reaching for things.
Searching and asking questions.
They may not have been the right choices or whatever, or it just, I had to keep going. But it was just this like inner, like, I know I can feel good. I know this. And I'm going to keep searching how, but I don't know how quite yet.
Yeah. And so what leads me to like the next thing is like the next step after like I was going through my divorce and I decided to come back to Louisville because what does Louisville do? It sucks you back in. And so I came and it just organically happened. Like it was like doors were opening up and I'm like, okay, I'm coming back to Louisville. This is what's happening. And I was just welcomed with like all of my friends and it was just this celebration almost for an entire year where I just felt supported, loved, opportunities were happening. I was meeting new people and I just felt like it was a celebration of like Lindsey made the best decision that she could have made. She chose herself and saved herself. And then I was just like, welcome back. But within, and I say this kind of like for people that have friends that are going through a divorce, I'm like, just give them a year of crazy, like give them a year to just go through what they need to go through and get out what they need to get out because they just lost everything and they're not going to act or behave like they maybe normally do. And just to have the grace and to let them get it out. And so at that time I was going to therapy. I was doing therapy through Zoom with a therapist, the man that I had met down in Naples, Florida. That's where I was, who had gave me those 2 pointers. And so I was doing therapy with him. And then I, kind of quickly got back into a relationship because I was like, oh, I just want to feel comfortable, right? And then I noticed, wow, my nervous system is way up. My nervous system is jacked. I hadn't done nervous system work at that point. I didn't even know how hypervigilant or hyper aroused I was of always being on alert and thinking I was in danger. And so that played into, some of the relationships that I got into. And that was like another, okay, wow, like this is here. This is another layer, another piece of like work I get to do. And also just not the right relationships for me. And, maybe not the best decision to get into a relationship when I had just gotten out of a marriage, but that's my story. And it just led me to even more healing.
There's another catalyst.
Yeah. Right.
I relate to this so much.
I see you over there squirming in your seat.
I know with everything because it's, same thing with me too. When I got divorced, he went back to Iowa and I'm like, no, just stay here, stay in Louisville, figure it out, make new friends, new chapter. Got into some relationships, not good ones at all, but I wanted to be loved, not realizing like, you can do that. You don't need somebody to do that. Like you can love yourself. You don't need a man for that. But I had to learn that. through.
Yeah. And I think that also
experiences.
those relationships maybe played a purpose too in possibly healing as well. So although there was
Sure.
both going on, there was still, they were in your life for a reason to like be that comfort or be that reminder or just be that support, even if it wasn't the healthiest thing. It's just, it's still part of our story. And that's one thing that I am embracing and really claiming is that like I don't have shame or guilt over my story. It is my story. You have your story. Like we all have our stories. Like there's no shame or guilt to hold because a lot of things weren't ours to carry to begin with.
Right.
A lot of things have been passed down through generational cycles, through our ancestors or through how we grew up, and so a lot of the burden that we carry and the things we do, they're not ours, and it's just this unlearning, right? And we've seen that out there, like in the spiritual realm. It's like we're like unlearning what we've learned.
Yeah. I also want to like say this to people because I think that in the beginning of like the process of unlearning, a lot of people tend to be very hard on themselves. And I use this, I say it to you because I say it to my husband a lot. Like he'll get frustrated because it's not working fast enough, and I'm like, we've got 40 plus years of doing something this way. It is not going to be easy to undo, even though we know it's not working. That's just the first step is like the awareness. Like that doesn't fix it. It's going to take a while to become a practice of doing the opposite. And you have to forgive yourself if you slip back into it, or give yourself grace if you're not doing it quick enough. Because you hear that a lot. Like it's the unlearning that gets you closer to yourself.
I love that you say it that way because in somatics and in embodiment, to actually embody something and for it to become a part of you, you have to do it thousands and thousands and thousands of times. So if you think about driving, when you go into that space and you're like driving down the road and you're like, where did I just go?
Yeah.
Like, because it's like, you know how to get home.
Right.
Right. And it's like, you've done it so many times. It is just in your body, in your system. You just know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's embodiment. That's like somatics, when you can like do something so much and embody it so much that it is one with you.
It's second nature.
Yeah. So having the grace that it just takes, and embody.
And like accepting that it's just going to take time and practice.
And I'm glad you said that because I think a lot of people do struggle because you're like, okay, I'm doing this.
I did this and I did this and it's still not fixed.
I should be healed. My journey's done.
Still have my outbursts. And I think that's the thing too. Like, it's like, I still have my fawn response. I will still sometimes go into that, and instead of beating myself up over it, I'm like, oh my God, I did that for so long. Of course, like there's part of me that's going to go back to that. I just have to be aware of it, and I have to forgive myself for it.
Absolutely. And that's the conversation. Like, oh, I did the thing again. Oh, sweet Leah. Like, sweet Lindsey. Like, you cute little girl. Like,
not beating yourself up over it.
You did the thing again, and then you just move on.
Silly Leah.
I love that. I'm going to start doing that. Silly Christy.
Oh my gosh. You did it again.
Feral as fuck, but it's okay. You're fine.
So the breath work, I am curious about this because I've done a couple of sessions, and the last time I did an embodiment circle with you, that's why I was like, ooh, and she's going to start doing this, because we did a little bit of a breath work practice. There are several different types of breath work. And what is the one that you experienced, and why are you choosing that to start doing?
Yeah, so this is, for anybody who's listening, this is David Elliott's breath work. And, it's been passed down to him. It has roots in pranayama. And so the breath is done through the mouth, and it's a 3-part breath. And it actually activates the nervous system. And the reason it activates the nervous system is to move energy out of the body, to move stuck energy wherever it's at. And the body is so wise. It is so wise. It knows how to move. So no matter what intention you go in with, even if the breath work is like, it's breath work for love or breath work for liberation, the body is going to do what it needs to do. The body is going to heal the way it needs to heal in that moment. It is so wise. And so that's why I love this breath work, one of the reasons. But I have just had so many profound experiences on it with meeting my ancestors, releasing things out of my body where my low back used to be so stuck, so tight, like something was living there, and it's not there anymore. I've released it. But
What did you say was in the inner, was the back, what lives
Inner
there?
child.
Yeah, there's inner child, there's safety, like security.
Okay.
That's right in there in that area. And I've just had so many different experiences where sometimes towards the end of the breath, when we're done, that's when you really get to receive the magic. So the breath work is hard. It's not easy. You go through a masculine part of the breath, which is the work part, and then it changes into more of a feminine part of the breath. So you're getting out of that alpha brainwave state, which is the thinking and doing, and the brain starts to turn off a little bit, and then you go more into beta, and then it connects into other parts of your brain that don't get to communicate when you're in an alpha brainwave state. And Google this. You can look this up and look up all the science.
Oh,
I
I
just
will.
know it works on me. I just know it works specifically for my body. But yeah, so you go through this whole experience, and towards the end, sometimes people will feel, and what I've felt is either complete bliss, like just so full of love and so full of like, it's all going to be okay. And just surrounded by white light or blue light or whatever it is I'm seeing in that moment. And then it's all going to be fine. I've also had moments of complete just like groundedness where I can't even, my body is like one with the earth. I can't even feel my fingers or like my body. I'm just so at peace and that it's going to like all be okay. And so it's different every single time. Most people are like tender afterwards. Like you just want to have like a good nourishing meal or take a shower and go to bed or go outside. Some people get really creative and they want to like make music and poems. And usually I'm tired because I've moved energy. So I just want to like, have a good meal and maybe watch some Netflix and then go to bed and just take care of myself.
We have not done an episode on breathwork yet, and we have also never talked about my experience with breathwork.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about it today.
We'll have Lindsey back on.
Yeah, but I really, talking to other people, talking to Callie, talking to you, my experience, it is a psychedelic experience without taking a psychedelic.
I did a mini session at Saturdays with Spirit.
Which was like 20 minutes, right?
20 minutes. And I could feel it going that direction.
Yes.
I could feel emotions coming up. I started to cry and I was like, why am I crying? Why am I crying? So I've never done anything I've done at home is just, 15, 20 minutes. I do feel a lot better, but I've never done a full on session. So I'll wait for you for that.
And I think even what you do, it's a breathing exercise.
Yeah, I think I would need help to tap that deeply.
Yeah, and so most people will do it one-on-one in a private session, and then some will just go straight into a group, and like the facilitator is going to be able to guide, the group, and that is normal for emotions to come up. I cried for years.
I feel like I would be scared to do it in a group at first. I feel like I'd want to do it alone because I'm like, what if I'm like, I'm like shaking?
I am.
Yeah, and there's also like the way that I did it through the pandemic is I connected with my breathwork teacher through Zoom. And so I got to do it in the privacy and healing in my own home, but connected to a community on Zoom. And so that's the way that I healed. I healed in my home, you guys.
Yeah.
But I was connecting to, people, through,
But I would love to do it with you because like I feel comfortable with you. Mm-hmm. Like it was nothing against the other person, but I just didn't know them. So I think there has to be kind of a level of vulnerability especially for me to really tap into those feelings.
I know, that's wise. You want to choose your healers correctly. Like, you don't always know everybody's energy.
Right,
and I think
yeah.
it's good to hold people accountable that are in the healing world.
Yeah.
And just because they're in the healing world doesn't mean
Yeah, and
it's
it was
okay.
Yeah, it was nothing against her. I just didn't know her very well. But with you, I already feel this level of comfort and safety with you. So like, if it did get into a vulnerable situation, which I struggle with people anyways, like I would feel safe with you.
How much longer you got on that training?
I know, right? Well, actually,
Just shoot me a text.
yeah. So, well, and then the other thing I want to say is like in group because so much energy is building up, what can happen in the body is the hands can do this, which is called tetany.
Yeah.
And when there's a lot of energy in the hands, it's connected to heart energy. There's just a lot of energy that's going on in the heart. And so we usually hold rocks to ground us. And then what also can happen is there can be a lot of energy anywhere in the body, really. But another one is the lips, and they'll do this, making like a little
pucker.
fish. Like a lot of energy here. And so what we do at that point within the breath work is we release energy by either laughing together as a group. And it's like, okay, I'd be like, all right, do your best friend's laugh. And then you guys are trying to do each other's laugh. And so you're laughing hysterically, but that moves energy out of the body. So it sounds weird, but it gets energy just like moving out of those areas. Or we scream, like we'll do a primal scream and just like get it out. And again, that just moves energy so it can get out of the mouth, it can get out of the hands, and then you just return back to the breath.
I love that. Leah, real quick, do my laugh.
What's mine?
You guys would be perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, we've talked about this before with her.
Okay.
You have these little healing women's gatherings.
Oh, yes.
Couple times a month.
So yummy.
Love them.
That's a
Love
Lindsey
them.
word.
I want to speak on this for just a minute about how important it is to have a community. We talk about this a lot, but
Yeah.
I don't think my husband's never done anything like this, so I don't think he understands. And he said something like, well, you have a social life. Like, you do that women's circle. And I'm like, that's not a social life. Like, I'm not going in there hanging out with these women. And I told him, I said, the last one I went to, I didn't know any of them. It was all new people. Like,
You didn't know anybody that was there?
I knew Erica's sister.
Oh, okay.
And Lindsay. I knew you.
But
Everyone else was there, was brand new.
But I'm proud of you.
To me.
To you. Yeah.
To me.
Proud of you.
And I was like, but there's something about being in a space with people who are also on the same journey. You don't even have to talk about it. It's like an unspoken camaraderie within the group. And you feel safe, you feel nurtured, especially because like you're there and you give that, you put a lot into these spaces and you put a lot of thought behind like I think after the last one I was like, there was a song that came on at the beginning of the breathwork session and I need to add that to one of my playlists. Can you send it to me? You create this container for safety and it's extremely healing and it has nothing to do with having a social life and hanging out with my girlfriends. So there's a difference there, but I do think things like that are incredibly healing if you can get out of your comfort zone, because I don't think I would have ever done that before without like a hand to hold.
Well, why don't you share what your embodiment circle is?
Yeah, so it's here in Louisville, and I usually do it once or twice a month at Core Pilates. And I also just want to say with Core Pilates, that space is a healing space.
I love that space.
Is.
And it's like I want to share this, but I don't, because it's like sometimes when you like bring something up, people just want to tear it down. You know what I mean? But it is a safe, sacred, healing building. It's been blessed by Buddhist monks. Like, it's just like, it is just a good,
Really?
good space. Mm-hmm.
There's crystals like in every corner.
It's very intentional. The studio owner, Bear Decatur, he has put things inside and outside of the building to specifically like hold it in a safe, sacred container with the elements, with the, you know, the 4 directions, just everything with it, you know. Yes. So
Which is probably why you walk in and you immediately are like, oh.
Well, that's the other thing too, is Leah and I haven't done Pilates since we did Pilates with you, because I feel like nothing will be the same.
I know we're trying to get on your schedule so bad.
But we're really struggling with our schedules. So we need
Just
to
right
talk.
now.
Can
It's
we talk
just a
after?
season.
I know, yes. It's so nice at the palace. Yes, we like to call it the palace.
But I love that.
I have been to a Pilates studio before, and I did not feel at home. But going to this Pilates studio, I was like, I feel very comfortable here.
Thank you for saying that. So yeah, those of you that are listening, so Core Pilates, it is mainly a Pilates studio. We have a school through that program that's led by a physical therapist called, and it's called Integrated Balance. But anyway, so downstairs is the Pilates studio, and then upstairs is where we have my embodiment circles. We have breathwork and sound bowl healing. We also do privates up there sometimes because we have a couple of machines that we, you know, get out of the way when we have the groups. But anyways, I do have my embodiment circle there once or twice a month. That's my home base. That's where I love to be. And these embodiment circles are created specifically for women and women identifying folk that want to drop into their bodies, that want to deepen back into the wisdom of their bellies, their intuition, that really just want to slow down and gather together with like-minded women in the community and just have a sacred space to just be with themselves and be with their bodies. And it's just a very intentional container where we get together, and I usually lead us through like a grounding meditation or some visioning. Sometimes we'll journal. It just depends on if it's the new moon or the full moon and what type of theme I have. This last time we drank ceremonial tea together. It was a heart chakra opening tea. We put some essential oils on. There's candles everywhere and an altar, and I just make this space just very cozy and feminine with all of the shades down. We also dance under the stars with these projector light stars, and so it's just a very beautiful setting. But depending on when we're working through, I always have Embody, which is this feminine movement meditation. And the idea with this feminine movement meditation is to drop into our senses, to get out of our thinking and our doing and drop into our feeling and our being and have a feminine practice together. And so I create a playlist. It's usually different every single time for the group. And I just weave us through these different energies and these different archetypes that we feel and experience as women. So I drop us into our sensuality, which is our sensual siren. I drop us into our power, our warrior queen. And then I drop us into our inner little girl, which she is all about play. And these are energies and archetypes that maybe throughout our life we have forgotten about, that have been have gone dormant, or that maybe we've experienced just that maybe feel far away. And so we get to tap into those archetypes and those energies and maybe get a little bit closer with them through dancing, through movement, through embodiment, through the somatics. And so I guide us through different somatic practices too, with shaking and tapping and just different things to just move energy out of the body and drop a little bit deeper. And so
It's amazing.
Yes. And Leah and I feel like go for different reasons because we have different needs or different things that we struggle with. But one of the things that I love about this embodiment circle is how many adults dance? Not very many, right? Not very many of us move. And usually when we think of like, oh, I'm going to dance, we think, oh, I'm going to go to a bar and dance because that's like the only place I can dance. And that's often not a very, like, I don't want to go to a bar. I don't want to, that's very low vibrational. But also, like, I don't want to dance and have men or a man be watching me and I feel unsafe, and I get to go and dance and not feel like I have to be performative or like look a certain way or dance to like what's socially acceptable. And I'm with women and I feel safe and I get to kind of move to however I'm feeling. Not like, okay, I'm doing this move because this is how you dance to this song. And this is sexy. And I'm trying to make myself look good because other people are watching me. You go in this space, the women don't like the women. They're worried about themselves. It's so safe and judgment free.
And our eyes are like half closed. I keep mine like very.
But I like it because it's like I get to be sexy. I get to be
playful.
I get to be ratchet and feral. Like I get to be all of those things. I get to be soft and feminine. I can rage, whatever it is. Like I can do it and it's safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you said that too about the eyes. So it is a movement meditation. And so we do try to keep our eyes closed or like gaze soft. And the idea is like, you don't have to look like me. We dance how we want to in that moment for that day. However, the feminine, how she's wanting to be expressed in that moment, in that song, in that power, in that energy. Yeah. And so although I'm demonstrating the whole time, I'm slowly dropping into what feels good for Christine today? What feels good for Leah today? Like what feels good for you? How do you want to stretch? How do you want to emote that energy through your body today? How do you want to like express your power? Yeah. How do you want to express your sass?
It's so liberating.
So let's collab and host an embodiment circle with Lindsey specifically for
our listeners,
our local listeners. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Sweetie.
Doggone it.
Please swear.
Mother trucker. We just did a TikTok like that because I'm like I cuss a lot. I'm just like the fuck.
Fuck yeah.
Yes, fuck yes. We're doing it. Anything else you want to add or ask or?
I love being around you. You just have this beautiful soul. And
Lindsey Love.
Please get that last name.
Yes.
I receive. Thank you so much for having me on. And I just adore you both. And I'm so glad we came into each other's lives and just what you're doing on this podcast, the conversations that you're having. And I just appreciate you guys so much. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. For our listeners, stay curious and hope to see you on the other side of Lindsey's embodiment circle.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.